And we will make the video and slides available after the meeting. So just to let you know who's going to be doing presentations today, we'll have from the North Carolina Barber Association, Michael T. Swinney, who's founder and member of the association. Mr. Swinney, how you doing?
I am doing well. Thank you for asking, Mr. Severs. Hope everyone else is doing well also.
And we have several folks here from the board staff, myself. Derek Hill is in the meeting. He is one of our board inspectors. Lauren Hutchins, one of our board inspectors, and Cindy Santa Cruz. So those are our three board inspectors. They'll be doing a piece of the presentation a little bit later this morning or this afternoon. So here's what we're going to go over today. I'll be giving an overview of some topics, an overview of the exam structure, and a discussion of some statistical information. And then Mr. Swinney will jump in to talk about the North Carolina Barber Association, about a video that it has prepared to assist individuals who are preparing for the exam, as well as some updates that might be coming shortly to that video to help folks as they try to pass our exam. And we'll have some discussion from the three board inspectors on some topics about the exam, passing the exam, some things that we see and that we encourage, best practices, and also what we're looking for. We'll have an opportunity for you to have questions and comments. I'm going to go ahead and mute everyone right now so that we don't get folks who are creating some background noise that I'm sure we're all used to after a year of attending meetings like these in the pandemic. But if you would like to make some comments or questions, you can use the chat feature for those of you who are not joining by phone. If you look in the top right corner, you'll see the little icon, the chat icon that I have here with a red arrow. You can also raise your hand if you want, and we'll stop at various points during the presentation to see if there are any questions or comments. And of course, at the end of this, that we'll have plenty of opportunity for you to ask your questions or make your comments. If you're joining by phone, if you could just hold on to your questions until the end, and then we'll give you an opportunity to unmute yourself so that you can ask questions. But we don't want folks unmuting themselves throughout the presentation so that we don't have people talking over each other. So, what have we done in the past with the exam? We've had three parts or three topics or ideas related to it. As you all know, it has included a haircut, shave, and sanitation portion. And I'm focusing right now just on the practical exam, which is really the main thrust of the workshop today. We've made use of live models rather than mannequins. And the exams took place at our office in Raleigh. As of now, we're doing a haircut and sanitation section, but we're not doing the shave. That's to make sure that we don't have too many people gathering in the space where we offer the exam to help ensure social distancing and to keep the numbers low. We're also using mannequins rather than live models for the same reason. We don't want folks gathering. We don't want too many people, so we're limiting the number of people who come in, and we're requiring the use of mannequins instead of live models. These changes are specifically related to the pandemic. These are methods to make sure that when we hold these exams, we do it in a way that's safe for everyone who's attending, for the staff, and for the folks who are taking the exam. And as you may know, we recently switched to having our exams at barber schools. We've moved to a new location, and that's allowed us to be able to hire a third inspector. Looking forward to the future, immediately after the pandemic, And we'll have some communications with you about when exactly we're going to switch. We will return back to the standard practice of having a haircut, shave, and sanitation for the exams. We will probably have a choice of a mannequin or live model. We may switch back to a live model, but we're going to make that assessment and make sure that we're doing it in a way that's safe for everyone. Even if the pandemic is formally at an end or the state of emergency declared by the governor comes to an end, there's still the chance that the virus will pose a threat to public health and safety. And so we want to make sure that the decision we make keeps public health in mind at the foremost. We will continue to hold the exams in the Barber schools. On a long-term basis, we're going to be doing a redesigned exam. Some folks who have attended our meetings know that the board has discussed this topic at last year. I believe it was in the August board meeting. There is currently an ad hoc committee that's charged with taking a look at our current exam. They've got some recommendations from staff members. They're going to be taking those recommendations and either altering them or developing new ideas for revamping our exam. The exam may extend beyond just looking at what we now look at for the haircut, which is the medium taper, men's haircut. However, there is going to be a much stronger focus on sanitation and safe practice, which is consistent with the goal of the mission of the board and the reason that the board exists. In addition, the board is moving to mannequins only. So we're doing mannequin only now, but that's because of the pandemic. But on a long-term basis, we're going to be looking at mannequins only as we continue to revise the exam. We will make sure that we communicate with you in advance. We are not going to set this out and start switching over to the new exam without giving you an opportunity to prepare your students for the new exam structure. I want to briefly go over some statistics about the exams, about the results that we're seeing, a comparison between the past and the present, a quick note about written exams, which aren't really the subject of this presentation, but which I just want to touch on briefly while I have you here. And just to give you the big picture, which is that the exam pass rate for practical exams has remained more or less consistent. I've got some data here, and you don't have to get too much into the details, but it's here in case you're the sort who likes to dig down into the data. For those of you who do business intelligence work, you can see this is an export from Power BI. And the thing to focus on are the two charts in the middle. These are apprentice exams by practical results and written results. Now, the practical results here cover period of July 2015 all the way through the end of January 2021. You can see that the pass rate is about 43%. We have about 1 in 5 people, about 21%, who don't appear for the exam. We have almost 1 in 5 people who don't bring a model with them, keeping in mind this is a live model for most of these exams. And then a number of people who had the models rejected, who failed, or who appeared but for whatever reason did not take it. DNA is did not appear and DNT is did not take it. In contrast, since October 2020, we've seen a pass rate go from up to about 53%. Now, a large part of this has to do with the fact that fewer people are having models rejected because they are either they brought a live model when we briefly allowed that, and they had a chance to go out and get a mannequin if their model was rejected, or for the most part, they're bringing mannequins that are not being rejected. Now, although the pass rate has increased to 53%, I'll discuss in a minute how we take out of the picture the effect of the models being rejected, take out the effect of people not appearing, and just focus on, of the people who take it, who is passing, how many are passing, and how many are failing. And you'll see here that the big picture of the statistics are for the past several years, 72% or 71% passed and about 28% failed. Again, this is removing the effect of the model rejection, the failure to appear, and other factors, and just focusing on if you took the exam, did you pass or did you fail? And since October 2020, we see a slight increase in the pass rate from 71% up to about 74%, 75%. And the fail rate has decreased a little bit from about 28% to 25%, and that's good. We wouldn't want to see a huge variation in the pass fail rate without some reasonable explanation that caused that variation. I'd be concerned if we did see a major drop in the people who are passing or a large increase in the number of passing. We'll still keep an eye on this because the number of exams that have been held since October 20 that are covered by these statistics is pretty small. It's just a handful of exams. So I'm glad to see that they're about consistent, but we're going to have to keep an eye and make sure that they continue that way. If I could just go back for a minute and bring to your attention the second chart at the bottom. Again, this isn't the main thrust of this workshop, but it's something that we've noticed, and those of you who attend the board meetings have heard discussion of, and that's the written results. You'll see in the bottom pie chart that about 53% are passing and about a quarter people fail. If you look here, you'll see, and don't get confused by the same colors, it's just the way the export occurs. But now, instead of 53% passing, we're seeing about 57% failing, which is a little bit of a red flag for us. That exam hasn't changed, and so there could be a few factors that are contributing. Certainly, we're all aware about how difficult it is to learn during the pandemic, learn remotely, learn in online classes. It's been a real challenge just emotionally for people, psychologically during this lockdowns, during the pandemic. And so certainly that may be contributing. It could be that online classes, which we have been allowing, are a contributing factor even apart from the pandemic. It's a little bit early for us to be doing anything about this, but we do want to bring it to your attention. It's not to say the schools aren't doing their job. It's just something we've noticed and we want to keep an eye on. When you hear us discuss today about the scoring, I mentioned that there's a hair cutting section and a sanitation section. We're not showing here the shave because we're not currently doing that. We do have a breakdown of the scores. We have under hair cutting, various topics, preparation of the customer, tapering, guideline length, and haircut outline, as well as the sanitation scoring about washing their hands, sterilizing tools and combs, discarding properly the used linens, and the grooming of the person who's taking the test. And now at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Swinney. Mr. Swinney is going to be talking about a video that the association developed. This is a video from the association, not the board, but it does feature one of our board inspectors, Cindy Santa Cruz. I've got a link here for it. Mr. Swinney, what would you like to tell us about this video?
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope that all of you are doing well. I already know that you are outstanding instructors and educators. It is a privilege to be on with you all this afternoon. Back when the pandemic first started and we switched over to using the mannequins in efforts, for safety due to COVID-19, and for hopefully making the test a bit more simpler for the students because we couldn't bring live models. Mrs. Cruz and I shot an educational video, which was merely meant as an example, but in the hopes that it would be very beneficial to the schools and the directors of education when showing the students how to possibly perform their haircut on the mannequin due to them not being able to bring a live model. We do understand that the mannequin can be a bit challenging because the mannequin does not move and cannot speak back. So if you go to our YouTube page, my YouTube page is God and the Barber, or you can also pull it up on our Facebook pages on the North Carolina Barbers Association on Facebook. You'll see that during the video, we did our very best to use all cutting techniques as far as using shear of a finger, shear of a comb, using your clipper guards and guides, just different techniques that we thought that would be beneficial for the student to see, even in using a numbering system with the colored guards and the basic wall senior clippers, to show them that there are many ways to get to the haircut and through the haircut. We're going to the same destination. How you get there, you can take a couple of different routes. So if you seem it to be beneficial, please go over the video with your students and then make it your own in your classrooms as a guide in efforts of showing the students that, yes, this haircut can be done, and this is what the board and the inspectors are looking for when they're grading on the mannequin and the haircut. We know it's a bit challenging now because, we're not on that mannequin all day in the classrooms because, of course, we prefer to be on live models. But, things have changed somewhat for us now at the barbering schools with online classes and switching over to the mannequin. But we can still help our students to get past this test and be licensed as an apprentice and a registered barber of this great industry of barbering in North Carolina. So please, please, please go to our YouTube page. Once again, it's God and the Barber. Very simple. If you can't find it, you can easily send me a text, Facebook, Instagram, or my personal cell, and we can make sure that you have access to that video. I'm more than willing to go over the video with you. I think it's pretty much self-explanatory, but it's about watching the video and having an idea, and at least having the students as a guide to see the video and what it can offer. So that's pretty much the spiel with that. But it's a great tool to use in your classrooms if you're available. Yes, sir.
Mr. Swinney, I know that you and I had some discussions about some updates that you might do to the video with some photos of haircuts that score well and haircuts that maybe don't pass. Is that something you'll be doing?
Yes, sir. Mr. Stevens, thank you for bringing that up as well. In addition to the video that we shot some months back, after speaking with some of the directors of education at the barber schools in North Carolina, we see it deemed necessary to not only have the video, but pictures of the haircuts that have failed and pictures of the haircut that have passed. So you will have a nice skew of cuts that you can show the students like, yes, this is a haircut that has passed on different types of hair, and this is a haircut that has failed. And I'm also a part of the Barber Association. If you haven't joined the Barber Association, please go and join the Barber Association. It's a nonprofit. I'm here to serve you, and our team is here to serve you. Just let us know what we can do. We work hand in hand with the board on things like this. You can go to ncbarbe.com and sign up your shop, your school, as a student, and as an apprentice or registered. And this is what we do. We try to make sure we have a nice linkage between the board and the schools and the barbers and the shops and the students in the state of North Carolina with the Barber Association and the Board of Barber Examiners. So we're going to be making sure that we add, in addition to that video, haircut pictures on a nice video of pictures, a nice scheme of cuts that passed, and a nice scheme of cuts that didn't pass for discussion. And also, we're going to be hosting a workshop. We're in the planning stages now of it being possibly via virtual, but I much would like to also do it in live person with the directors of education at the schools in North Carolina, with hopefully the inspectors, if we can get that worked out, on showing you all, having a haircut workshop, just simply on the mannequin, us getting together at a workshop. It'll probably be about 50 of us or so, possibly, with the directors of education and the lead instructors of the school, that we can show you how to do this haircut on a mannequin, and have questions of how it's being done on the mannequin. We're here to help. Just let us know what we can do. But thank you for that, Mr. Severs.
Thank you, and I do want to make sure folks know that when we put these pictures into the video, or when we share them with the association to put in the video, which I think you all find helpful, we are not going to have information in there such as the exam ID that would tie it to that student. So your student doesn't have to worry about seeing their name and say, look at what John Doe did when he submitted this exam, or did the barber services on this mannequin. So this is just really to help the schools with your instructional purposes. This would be a good chance for folks, for us to stop and see if there's any questions that have come in. Again, you can use the chat. If you have questions at this point, and you don't want to wait till the end, you can unmute yourself as well. All right, then we're going to move forward into a discussion that we're going to have with the Barber board inspectors. We've got 3 of them here who are the 3 who are responsible for grading the exams. We're going to start out with Derek Hill. Derek, are you there? You can just unmute yourself.
Greetings, everyone. How y'all doing? My mission is just to discuss the different types of mannequins. There's 2 different mannequins, as we all know. You have your straight hair mannequin and your curly haired mannequin. But when you get those type of mannequins, you want to make sure, remind your students to look when purchasing their mannequin. They determine if they have a straight hair mannequin that's for chemical services or one that's for hair cutting. Because, for example, if you have a straight hair mannequin that's designed for chemical perms, it's going to have a straighter texture hair all the way to the scalp. So it's going to, if you cut it too short, it's going to expose scalp. Also, if you have a curly hair mannequin that's designed for hair braiding or hair relaxing, the closer you get to the scalp, the more you're going to see a wavy pattern. So you just want to make sure when they look and purchase their mannequin, they look at the description to make sure it's for hair cutting and not chemical services. I think that covers it, Mr. Severs.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Lauren, are you on?
Yes, I am. Hi, everyone. My mission today is to talk about the section on sanitation and how we grade that. And if you notice, there's a section on hand washing before work, combs and tools sterilized, used linens discarded, and the grooming of the person taking the test. Each of those are worth 25 points. So what are we looking for when they do that? You know, we're looking for, do they wash their hands before they begin to work on their client, on their mannequin client? Either one. Some forget, usually one will start and then it's a chain reaction. Some think that because they sterilized their hands when they came in the door, that was washing their hands, and it is not. It's, did you wash your hands before you started on your client? Cools and, excuse me, combs and tools sterilized. You know, do they have combs and tools? That's a big plus. And are they sterilized? Are they broken? Are they not clean when they come in? If they're not clean when they come in, do they clean them before they start using them on their client? Do they sterilize them? What do they do? Do they know what to do when they drop a comb? And if they do, you know, how they handle that. The next section is used linens discarded. You know, they properly discard the linens that they use. Are they throwing them in the floor? Are they putting them in the designated place bag that's provided for them to discard their used linens? There's not a lot of used linens right now. Are they throwing the next strip in the trash can? Are they wadding it all up and putting it in their bag? Do they know what to do with their discarded linens? And lastly, the grooming of the person taking the test. And this is a big one. They're required to wear a smock. And it's just not any smock. It needs to be a clean smock. And it needs to be, they need to be well groomed. They need, if it's all wrinkled, if it looks, we've seen all kinds of things. Yes, you're going to lose points for something that looks like you pulled it out of a bag and have never, touched it before. And it doesn't matter. It does matter. Are they clean? Did they just roll out of the bed and come in there and, however, is their hair cut? Are they neatly groomed? Are their fingernails clean? Are their hands clean? They should have washed them, so they should be clean. Those are the things that we look for the grooming of the person taking the test. Clean shoes. I know that the guidelines were relaxed. I don't know when. Dennis will have to answer that question. But are their clothes clean? Are they neat? Do they have on clean clothes? And I think that's about all that I have for the sanitation part. If they do those things, then they're going to get that. Those are easy points.
Thank you. That's a great bit of information. Before we move to Cindy, let me ask Derek. Derek, are there any issues that when you're looking at the scoring that you see with particular types of mannequins? I mean, we allow people to bring the mannequins that meet the instructions. So they could be curly hair, they could be straight hair. Do you see anything where people have particular challenges with certain types of mannequins?
Well, the ones I've seen that have the most challenging issues for an applicant is the ones that are made for chemical services, because they're blended with a lot of more fibers than natural hair to withstand heat or chemical penetration of the lift powders, your high lift colors, and so forth as that. So when you start to cut that, it seems to nag on the clipper over and over because it's built to withstand. It's built to have strength. So you want to make sure you're getting ones that's built for cutting because they have a softer grade texture of hair, not meant to resist chemicals. So, but a lot of people come in with mannequins they just got as quickly as possible, and they're coming out of the plastic, and they haven't taken the time to prep the mannequin.
And let me ask you a question about the mannequin, about setting up the mannequin that came in. The question is, do we prefer tripod stands or the stand you can attach to the chair?
As inspectors, we don't have a preference. We want them to be comfortable, whatever they need to do the haircut. I've seen tripods. I've seen the over the chair stands. I've seen the ones that hook onto the arm. It's whatever makes you comfortable doing the haircut.
Thanks. And let me ask Lauren, you were talking about sanitation. Are there things that you see that tend to trip people up with sanitation during the exam?
The washing of their hands is a big one. It's not just running your hands underwater. Do they wash their hands? That's very important. Sanitation is very important. And understanding that, are you washing your hands before work? Are you washing your hands before you start to work on your client? The combs and tools sterilized. I mean, this is covering combs and tools in general. And we've seen, I think Cindy has a picture somewhere. We had one guy that most of the teeth in his comb were missing. I don't know, and how he didn't have the tools to do his job and know they weren't clean and sanitized. Are their tools safe? I think we took a picture of hair clippers that were missing part of the covering of the clippers, and that was very unsafe to use on a client. So those are things that they need to look at. And they need to clean their tools before they come for the exam. I can't stress that enough. And if they are going through, if they don't, or that they have a way to, to show us that they do. But don't bring dirty tools to a state board exam.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. It's not the best impression at the outset. All right, I'm going to turn now to Cindy Santa Cruz, who is going to talk to us about the haircut and the taper outline and guideline that we're looking for, including the neckline taper, which is 50 points out of 100 on that portion of the exam. So I'll let you jump in and talk to us, Cindy.
All right, well, hello everybody. So the first thing that I do when I give instructions during the exam is I go over what we expect to see. Now, the state board, they tell you on your state board letters what we want as the result, and that's the medium tapered haircut. I can understand that not a lot of people get that practice in for the medium tapered haircut, because I mean, nowadays everybody wants the longer hair or the really, really short fade, But for the medium tapered haircut, that's a universal haircut, okay? Because you use all different types of tools, your shears, your clippers, your trimmers, but we have, as part of the state board exam, we have that requirement, okay? There's certain things that we ask that you do not do because it will be considered an automatic failure. Okay, I'll just go over a few things. First off is if we see that you have shaved using a trimmer to do an outline in the front of your mannequin or on the neck, meaning that you start from your taper a 0 all the way up, that will be considered an automatic failure. If you have shown us a temp fade, which is the taper on only your temples and the back of the neck, that be considered an automatic failure. Okay. And of course, if you just give up on the haircut, say you started your medium tapered, but then you suddenly just give up, we do deduct points, and that would be considered failure because you have not completed the medium tapered haircut. So those are just a few things that will cause a barber to fail. Okay, now moving along as to what we expect. So your guideline length for the top of the hair is 3 inches. All right, and if you have a curly hair mannequin, that would be 2 inches. And I also say that there are some mannequins who have a combination of curly and straight, so it sort of looks like a wavy pattern. Then that would be about 3 inches. Okay. Now moving from the guideline length to the top, all right, we already said 2 to 3 inches depending on the hair texture that you have. Now moving on the sides. The sides will be slightly less than your guideline length to the top, okay, because you have to blend the sides. All right, the sides will be cutting off. You'll experience the bulk weight there. All right. And then you move down to your taper. Now the taper is 50 points. That's like the biggest score right there. Okay, so how you complete the taper, we'll start off if your mannequin has a beard. Okay, for bearded mannequins, you have to show us the sideburns. So come prepared, take down the beard slightly. What you're going to do is you're going to start from, you can start from the mustache down to the goatee, and a little bit here, you can clear that up, but leave the sideburns long when you come in. Okay, but when you come to the exam and you don't have that prepped, don't freak out. All right, because the instructions are when you do your test, for the sideburns, you do have to cut in the middle of the ear, of your mannequin's ear, right in the middle, and anything below the middle should be clean, okay, because we want to see that big width of the sideburns. All right, now I also say do not thin the sideburns, leave the width as is, okay? Don't try to point it or make it skinnier, just leave it nice and wide, exactly how it came. Now, if your mannequin does not come with the beard, don't freak out, okay? Just focus on the taper. All right. Now, my video, I stress that please use number 2 guard. All right. And the reason for the number 2 is your safety net. Okay. If you go lower than a 2, like how I said, a 0, and then all the way up to a 2 guard, you're going to bring your taper too high and you're going to bring it too short, and that is an automatic failure. Okay. I know it's difficult because on live models you can actually do lower than a 2, but as long as you presented us a nice gradual taper along the neckline and the back of the neck, these mannequins present a lot of challenges, okay? So that's why we tell you just focus on your taper. You take your 2 fingers and you're going to place it on top of the mannequin's ear. This top finger, your index finger, is going to indicate that's how high, as far as high the taper should stop. So you don't want to go past your first finger, okay? Then you take your 2 fingers and you trace it along the neckline of the mannequin, and the same concept. Don't go past the top index finger. And you'll do the same for the back of the neck, okay? So your taper, okay, is 50 points, all right? Your guideline length is 15 points. And then your outline, the outline of the haircut. Imagine a light bulb, all right? It's got nice rounded edges, and as soon as it goes down lower, it's tapered, and it slightly gets, comes on the 45, okay? So 15 for the outline. If it looks like a mushroom cap, which means you did not touch the sides enough, you didn't blend the sides enough to complement your taper, you need to work on that, okay? So 15 for the outline, 15 for the guideline length, which is your 2 and 3, and then 50 points for your taper, and you have to dress your mannequin with the neck strip and a hair cape, and that's the easy 20 points, okay? And if at some point, you find yourself the neck strip is falling off the mannequin, just fix it, stop what you're doing, fix it, because we do deduct points if we see that you have not fixed up your client's neck strip or hair cape. That indicates that you're just going to continue to cut hair and have hair potentially on your client's clothes. So we do look at that. We do stress on that very important thing. Okay, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. At this point, we'll move into the questions and comments. This is your opportunity to ask any questions. I'm going to remind you that if you want to submit any comments or questions, the best way to do it is going to be in the chat. And you can also use the option to raise your hand if you need to, using the red or the blue arrow icons there. If you're joining by phone, feel free to take yourself off mute as we go, and feel free to ask questions. We did have a question that came in during the presentation about whether we had a particular website or vendor that we suggest that the students use to order mannequins. And because we're a government agency, we don't have a vendor or a method that we say people should do. We're not going to be promoting it, but we are, there was a comment from one of our inspectors that there's certainly many retail online outlets that might have suitable mannequins. And if you have any questions about particular vendors, you can reach out to us. We just can't weigh in on a particular vendor type. So I appreciate that question. If at any point we answer your questions and you have a follow-up or we're not adequately addressing your question, feel free to just let us know by continuing the chat or raising your hand again or unmuting yourself. We have a question here that I'm going to ask. Let me ask Derek. I'm not sure. I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you happen to know if, or Cindy, one of the two of you can jump in, since Cindy, you were doing this presentation about the measurement for the number 2 guard in millimeters. I'm not a barber, so I am definitely not qualified to answer that. But if one of the two of you could come in and answer that, that'd be great.
Okay.
And actually, it looks like someone jumped in. Mario Little jumped in with 6 millimeters. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
All right.
I know every guard is different because it comes from a different company. The one that I used in the video was the red guards. I think they're called like speedometers. That's the one that I use. Now that is actually read as a 00. So if you have those red guards and you have a 00, that's considered a number 2. Okay, and those guards get a little confusing. Now you can also use the number 2 guard for the walls, and they're almost slightly the same. Okay, they're slightly the same.
Thank you. Derek, did you have anything to add, or Lauren?
Yes, if you're using walls number 2 and the Andes number 2, they're both right at 6 millimeters. If you vary from that, they should list it on there, but the 2 guard that we're referring to is a 6 millimeter guard. So whether you're using blades or guards, as long as you get to that 6 millimeter, you'll be fine. Mr. Little, you was correct.
All right, thank you very much, and I appreciate that. Jay, I appreciate the question. We got a question, and I'll take this one, does it necessarily have to be a male mannequin, or would any gender work? So right now we're talking in terms of the current process for mannequins, not what's going to be done in the future when we move back into doing shaves and doing other features with what I refer to as the long-term future for the revised exam. But for right now, any gender will work because we're not doing the shave. So female, male, whatever the folks want to bring in, and their instructions will tell them that either one is fine. All right, Derek, jump in. Saw you raise your hand.
I just wanted to piggyback off that question about the male mannequin or a female mannequin. If you bring a male mannequin that has a beard, you will have to cut the sideburns in the middle of the ear. But if you choose a female mannequin, you won't have any sideburns, so your taper still has to adjust to the client's head shape. So it does kind of determine on where you're stronger at doing your tapers on whether you get a male mannequin or a female mannequin.
Good. Well, it's good that they have that option now, so they can kind of pick something that suits them right now, and we'll go from there. Let's see if we have any other questions. All right. Are you planning to go to male mannequins? So the short answer is that's to be determined. When we look at the long-term outlook, the answer is probably yes. We had some discussion about the shave portion. We had discussion as well about some of the challenges with doing shaves on mannequins. Of course, testing for people's ability to handle blood spills, but also just what I understand, again, not being a barber, from Cindy's comments, and Cindy, you can jump in, is that it can be a little of a challenge to some degree about doing that shave on a mannequin. But the plan is probably to jump in the future to male-only mannequins so we can assess that shave. But that is to be determined at this point as the ad hoc committee continues to meet. Cindy, was there anything you wanted to add? If not, that's okay.
No, that's I think you got it on pack. It would be difficult to do shaves on mannequin.
Lauren, I see your hands up. Did you have something you wanted to add?
I did have a couple of things that we had talked about regarding the mannequin. Cindy and I had looked, and Derek also, they already talked about cutting the sideburns. We do inspect the mannequins before they come and take their exam, and many times they'll come with the mannequin in the box, straight out of the box. They'll say, well, our instructor told us that's the best thing to do, and that's good, but they do need to be brushed and be familiar with them. They can remove the bulk from the hair, meaning, take, if they've got really long hair, they can take the, a few inches. We need 4 inches of hair, but that doesn't mean, I don't recommend that they go and cut the hair before then. But we've seen a lot of people struggle with removing a lot of hair off a mannequin, and that's taking time out of their 45 minutes to do the haircut. Also, they can wet the hair. They should have tried this before. What's the best result? Am I going to get a better result if I wet that hair on the mannequin? And like Cindy said, mannequins bring a lot of challenges to this, and it's hard to pass an exam on. If you had a live model, you probably cut their hair since the beginning of barber school. And that's who you want to bring. It's the same for your mannequin. You want to be familiar with your mannequin. Like I said, we do examine them for marks on the head, to make sure that there's nothing has been done to them, that they have ears, that they have what is needed for them to take the test, and that they've not pre-cut their mannequin. I mean, we've had to refuse some because they were too short. So I don't suggest that they do that. And also, sometimes I think with the curly mannequins, they think that's going to be easier, or so don't, be familiar with your mannequin. I think that's important. Cindy was saying the 20 point, easy 20 points when applying the neck strip. We have watched people fool and fumble with the neck strip, the hair, handling the neck strip, the hair, getting the cape on, and take half of their time that they have for the haircut trying to get that in position. That's something they need to practice before then. I really suggest that they practice their steps before they come and try to do it there, and that they have a clip, that they have a cape clip, that they have a clip to put the hair up with to get it out of their way. I was just trying to think of some of the things that they had that we've seen happen. That they have the combs or the picks or the wide tooth combs as necessary to comb through that hair and get it, produce a good haircut when they're finished. That's it.
Thank you. We had a question, and Cindy, I'll have you take this, but I am displaying the exam scoring slide. What's the point value of draping again? Looks like that's part of the 20 points. Cindy, you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, so it is 20 points, and for each time, let's say you forget to do the neck strip application, but you've provided the hair cape around the neck. Well, if you at some point during the exam, if you don't apply the neck strip and you continue on doing the haircut, then we're going to take 10 points off, because that's half right there. It's really easy to get your 20 points if you remember to use a neck strip. That's 10 points right there. And again, if those neck strips, sometimes it happens, they get wet or they rip or it falls because the hair cape wasn't, firm enough around the neck. As long as you see that and you catch that and you reapply a new neck strip, then you will gain your points back. Okay, but if we see that you're not doing that, I mean, the points are going to be taken off, and you'll lose a good 10 points just for a neck strip, or hair cape, or both. Okay, so just remember, the same way you would drape your client, the same way you're going to do it in your barber exam. It's 20 points. And one thing I wanted to make a correction. Now, I did say I use a 00. for the red guards, my correction is it's actually the number 0. Okay, the number 0 is my number 2 guard. All right, and I do apologize for that. I didn't have the pictures in front of me.
Thanks, I appreciate that correction. 0 is 2. I guess if you're a barber, you know what that means, and if you're like me, that sounds pretty crazy. All right, this is, we'll still take some questions. I do want to make sure that folks, there's about 7 folks who joined by phone. If you have a question, I think I may have mentioned this, you can press, I think it's *6, maybe *5, but I think it's *6 to unmute yourself if you want to jump in and ask a question. And while we're waiting to see about any additional questions that may come in, Mr. Swinney, mind if I put you on the spot here for a minute?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
All right, good. And you don't even know what I'm going to talk to you about. It's very generous of you. But, you know, I think those of you who have attended workshops we've done in the past on other matters about schools and some of the meetings know that we kind of see that there's a bit of a difference between the board's role and the role of something like an association. And so you've heard us say, well, we can't bring in, you know, we can't make a recommendation on specific vendors to use, or we're not going to necessarily tell students they have to bring in this type of mannequin or that type of mannequin. But, you know, Ms. Swinney, it sounded like from earlier in the presentation that there's potentially a role for the schools and the association to work together on maybe what are maybe more best practices rather than specific guidelines from the board. Is that kind of what you would say?
Yes, sir. Most certainly, the association can definitely recommend mannequins, and we will base our recommendations off of conversations via the schools and what's working for students. I know a lot of students. Actually, I'm in the middle of texting now because students are taking the test on Monday in Greensboro, and they were asking the same question. Can we use a mannequin without a beard, or does it have to have a beard? It appears that when they're ordering from Amazon now, the shipping seems to be delayed and they're not getting their mannequins in time. Even if they're ordering through Prime 2 and 3 days ahead of time, even a week ahead of time. And even I've known some students to order their mannequins a month ahead, especially if it's coming from overseas, and have not received it. I know it's easier to grab a mannequin from the beauty supply store that's a female versus a male. But a strong recommendation that we have, you can never fail going through your supply companies where you get your kit and books. So via Burmax, My Lady, or Mariana, they can send you mannequins in bulk by 12 or by 24, and they can be to you within a week's time. I know when we have ordered mannequins, we include mannequins in our student kits, and that works well, very well, because we're able to have them practice on a mannequin while we're there. We try to give them at least one per semester, and we can teach and train them on the curly haired mannequin and the straight haired mannequin with the beard, and one without the beard, so they have a variation. When they get out of school, you know, they can have a resource to purchase their own, and we can make sure there's one ordered for them prior to them leaving school. And all of that can be included in the student's deposit and kit cost. So that's, you know, that's what I have seen has been working for schools, to just order it through your supply companies. And if you're not ordering a mannequin in their kits, begin to just add through their kits a curly hair mannequin, a straight hair mannequin with the beard. I can't remember their particular names. And also, I knew the Jenny. Jenny is the one that's just a female. All of them will work great. So, you know, that's the association can definitely help out with that. So if you have any questions, please reach out to me, and we can definitely lead you to a resource for that. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Stevens, for that.
All right, thank you. We had a couple more questions coming in. We're coming close to the end, but feel free to submit your questions and we'll get answers to you even if we run out of time. But we had one question, and Derek, if you maybe take this one, can mannequins can they be pre-cut to, but not shorter than 4 inches? And I might add, is that a good idea for them to do it? And I've got you on mute, so if you're, there you are.
Okay. 4 inches is the minimum you can pre-prep for, but I would tell them just to remove enough bulk to get their clippers through. I would say no more than 5 inches, 5 to 6 inches, because everybody's eye for 4 inches. They're not using what they call an all-purpose comb, which is a ruler, and a lot of people try to eye that. So I would say no more than 6 inches, but please measure it. If you're unsure, don't cut it.
And
But
was there, yeah, you
one
wanted
thing
to ask?
I have my hand up to comment on what Mr. Sweeney has just said about ordering the mannequins. For if you have a student that doesn't go take the test right away, they come back months later and they're rushing to find a mannequin. Any of your professional beauty supply stores where you have to have a license to shop there, they have those mannequins and they can order them usually in a few days.
Great. Well, we had a question as well to come in, and I'm gonna say, I guess it's how many mannequins do we suggest students have in their kit for the course and the exam? And from our perspective, there's a requirement to have one for the exam. Certainly, if you want to be really prepared, you could have multiple if you wanted. Mr. Swinney, is that one you want to take in since it might be a best practices question? If not, I'll have one of the inspectors jump in.
Yes, sir, and the inspectors can definitely jump in as well. From my experience, it's very beneficial to include at least 3 mannequins, bearded kits. Most 1528 programs for the year, at least 12 months. So that's about 3 semesters or so. Most part-time programs, 18 to 24 months, run you about 6 semesters, give or take. So at least 3 to 4 mannequins, depending on how your school's program is set up. One curly with the afro. They make one, like Mr. Hill had said, that's kind of in between. It's just for relaxing. So they also made one that's just a straight afro. It was a lady. From my understanding, they had discontinued that one, but I think it's still one that's in relation to that one that you can get. And in main retrospect, the straight hair mannequins, you can get the guy with the long hair and the beard. You can also get the lady with the straight hair, and that's 2 mannequins to practice a state board haircut with straight hair, and possibly 2 to practice with the curly hair. And also, I just kind of keep some on standby at the school. And if the students, need it when they get ready to graduate, the school can determine how they want to handle that if the student needs more mannequins.
I appreciate that. And let me get a question here from Jermaine Johnson. Feel free to take yourself off mute and jump on in.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for participating. My question is when will the pictures of the passing mannequin heads or passing models be recorded just as well as the failing mannequin heads and models? And I ask this question because what's been problematic is that when a student fails the test and we compare it to mannequin heads that pass the test, the variations are so slight, but the grades are so far apart that it's hard to actually tell the student what they did wrong and why the grades are so far apart without having any real proof of what's a passing grade and what the points was taken off versus what failed. So when will the passing mannequin heads be posted or documented by the board so that when we ask these questions, we show these things that we have some real grounds to stand on?
Well, let me just mention why we take photographic evidence of the folks who don't pass. And that's because their ability to get a license is being affected by not passing. So we want to make sure that we have some documentation on hand for folks whose rights are being affected. And that's in part as well because they could come to the board and appeal the fact that they have failed the exam. So we want to make sure we have some documentary evidence to say, to help support the scoring in addition to the actual score. I do know you and I have talked and you've expressed this concern. We could certainly look at whether it is going to be in the state's interest to be recording the additional documents. That might be something we can look at. I don't, respectfully, I don't agree that there is a negligible difference between passing and failing unless we're talking about a 69 and a 71 or a 70 and a 71. But I do understand that's your feeling on this, and I do appreciate that, and appreciate that you shared that. We'll look in the future about whether, but I don't have specific plans decisively about whether we're going to do that. But when we do, I'll be sure to reach out to you and let you know so that you can have that. And then if there's any time where someone feels like an individual failed the exam and they ought not to have failed the exam, reach out to me and we'll provide you a copy of the score sheet and the photos. And I think if there's a case where you feel that someone failed the exam and shouldn't have, we can talk to you about the procedures that that person can follow. If we're talking about a situation where someone passed the exam, then certainly the rights wouldn't be negatively affected by that. But we'll look at that and I'll be sure to let you know, but I don't have a specific time frame at this point.
Mr. Severs?
Yes, please.
So I'm referencing exactly what you're saying. I'm referencing someone that failed versus someone that passed. But when I have the conversation with the parents and the student, I don't have anything to compare it to besides a mannequin that passed but was not recorded. I know they passed, the student that passed know they passed, and I'm only comparing to what you guys passed. But if it's not recorded, it's really no grounds to stand on when the argument starts, when the conversation starts with the student. And so the student doesn't bring this to the board because we're the first line of defense. We're the first line, and we're working together with the board. So I'm not against what you guys are doing. I'm saying we have to deal with it on the front end. And if there's nothing to actually compare it to other than I have a mannequin head of a student that passed, and I have identical mannequins because we send them with the same mannequin head. And I get one person who gets a 40, another person gets an 84, and I put them side by side. And I've had other school owners and people from the board look at these mannequin heads, and they can't tell me the difference between which one passed or which one failed.
Yeah, I'm not sure who would be looking from the board, but certainly they're not speaking on behalf of the board in that respect. But I appreciate the comments. We don't take these pictures for the benefit of parents or for the schools. It's for the benefit of defending the agency's action. But I take your point, and I'll certainly be happy to consider it and look at that as something that we might look at as a possibility, and I'll reach out to you and let you know once we decide one way or the other about what we'll do, if that's okay. But I do understand your point. All right. And then Mr. Bryant, you said Calyx is the Afro mannequin, so we'll just mention that for informational purposes. We are running a little over, so I do understand if folks want to take off at this point. I think we'll stay for 5 minutes more for any last minute questions people have, but I do appreciate your time. I appreciate your comments and questions. And as always, feel free to reach out either to the association or to the board to discuss this further if you'd like, any of these topics. All right, well, I think if that's all the questions, thank you all very much, and I hope you'll have a great weekend. and take care. We'll make this slide deck and the video available in the future. Mr. Brody, did you have a question or a comment? I see your hand up and you're muted right now, so if you did want to make a comment, feel free to unmute yourself.
Hi, I have a question.
Please.
Hi, yeah, my name is William Short. My question is in regards to what the gentleman was just talking about having a comparison. So I've looked at the grade sheets, and yeah, it'll say what each topic was, and you missed 30 points here, 30 points here, or whatever, and it's just a fail. Is it possible that we can get a description of what actually was taken off? Because when I do a mock state board, that's how I grade my students. So then, therefore, they'll know how to proceed in improving upon the next exam. And then also, I believe that'll help that gentleman be able to explain to his students' parents of why his student actually failed or not, because there's a description of what actually happened in that particular haircut, and it'll be able to be pointed out to me as an instructor. Is that something we possibly can do?
Yeah, that's a great comment. And there's a couple of things I'll mention, and I'm just gonna, if you don't mind, mute you real quick because there's a little background noise, but feel free to unmute yourself if you need to. When we do the exam scoring, the inspectors do generally make some brief comments about issues they may have noted during the exam that affected the points. However, I think as we do the new design of the exam and we restructure the point system, we are certainly going to take a close look at giving a little more detail about a breakdown of the scoring so that we can add some clarity to that process. And certainly I think our staff in the meantime can look at trying to make reasonably detailed comments to help make it clear where points were taken off or what issues we encountered for that. I hope that addressed your question. If not, Mr. Bryant.
Yes, sir. How y'all doing? And again, thank you all for this meeting. I was wondering, will you be asking, or will the inspectors be asking any questions of or pertaining to the shave during the haircuts?
Not currently, but in the future, when we were looking at the long-term approach to this, we were looking at possibly having components of the exam where we might approach the person and say, ask questions, ask information about the performing of the shave, ask questions about blood spill procedures, and what they do. But right now during the pandemic, we have just simply dispensed with the shave portion. So I think as we reopen back up, we'll be looking closely at that, and certainly as part of the restructuring of the exam, there may be an opportunity if the board chooses to go that direction, and that was part of the discussion to maybe have an opportunity for the inspectors to approach someone and ask specific questions. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brody, I still see your hand up. If you do have a question, feel free to unmute yourself. So I'm going to lower your hand, but feel free to unmute yourself and ask away. Anyone else have any questions? Well, I thank you all very much for your time. I appreciate the comments, the suggestions for the future, and different things that they're looking for us to do. And we will share this video as well as the slide deck. And thank you, Mr. Swinney. If you're still there, I want to thank you for taking the time to join us on this. I want to thank the inspectors for their valuable contributions in working on this. Mr. Swinney's association was the one who brought forward the idea of doing this workshop, so I want to thank him for that. All right, you'll have a great weekend.